Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of the Estranged Heart podcast. A couple of announcements and reminders before we get started with today's episode. And these announcements are new and different. So for those of you who are used to kind of skipping through those, you might want to stick around and listen. The first is I've been mentioning for the last several weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, about new and different things coming in October for the Estranged Heart podcast. And so I wanted to let you in today on a couple of those because they will directly affect how you're listening to the podcast. So there will be a new day and time, a new day that the podcast will be released. So we are moving from the release on Sundays to the release on Wednesdays. And there is a reason for that. I hope it doesn't cause too much disruption for my listeners, but in order to do some other things I needed to do, I needed to shift the day that the episode is released. So starting October 2nd, you will receive, that is a Wednesday, you will receive the first episode in the month of October. And the main episode will be released every Wednesday moving forward. The second is you now have the option to leave voicemail messages for me. And I have linked that in the show notes. And there's also a button you can click on if you just go directly to my website, theestrangedheart.com, and you're able to leave voicemail messages. This is going to come in handy when the second new thing that's coming for the Estranged Heart podcast is shorter little mini episodes, if you will, that will begin in October. And I am asking for those of you who listen who may want to leave a message for either your parent or your adult child. Yes, your parent or your adult child. And I'm calling these episodes Dear Estranged Parent and or Dear Estranged Adult Child. So if you'd like to leave a message for them, you may do so via the voicemail message, and I will air those on the show. And those mini episodes will be released on Sundays. So more to come on that, but that will begin in October as well. So if you're interested in leaving a voicemail message for me, even if you're a listener and you just want to send a message to me, that won't be aired on the show, but you can do the same thing by reaching out via this link in the show notes or directly on my website. The third thing is there will be a validation workshop that will be facilitated and hosted by me on Sunday, October 13th from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I know several folks have asked for this. I put this on usually twice a year, and it's well received each time. If you want to know how to improve communication, this is one super power for communication, is learning about validation and invalidation. And without fail, every time I post this workshop, folks leave and say, wow, I had no idea that what I was actually doing was invalidating my child instead of validating. And so if you're interested in that, send me an email to register, theestrangedheart@gmail.com. One more quick thing is that our new support groups for estranged moms and recently reconciled moms has started. They started last week, And so those groups are closed. They'll run for 8 weeks. And then if you're interested in joining the next cohort for 8 weeks, that will begin in November. And those will be just in time for the holidays to be able to help support you through Thanksgiving and Christmas and the New Year. So if you're interested in that, please drop me an email and I'm happy to put you on the list to be notified when those groups begin to open up for registration. So, with that being said, on to today's episode. Today's episode is titled Expectations and Estrangement, the Hidden Dynamics. And before we dive into this, I have a quote. We must let go of expectations of how life should be in order to experience how life can be. Okay, and that is by Dr. Deborah Rebel. So, this role of expectations in families is something that I see often when I'm meeting with estranged parents. There is, without fail, an expectation of some sort that parents have regarding their adult children, regarding contact. How often are they? Should they be in contact? Information that is shared, what they're going to do with their life, how they're going to manage um, a spouse and children, and the part that the parent plays in that, parent slash grandparent. And this is where things go off the rails. Now, is it the sole reason why things go off the rails? Probably not. However, this does have a significant impact. And oftentimes, parents do not realize. Parents will tell me, I don't have expectations. My kid's free to do whatever they want to do. And then when we get into talking more about the relationship, we do discover that there are expectations that the parents have. And so I'm wanting to kind of uncover a lot of that today and walk through why these expectations exist, how they differ from parents to adult child, and how we can learn to manage a way out of that and a way into, as this quote said, learning how life can be, being able to experience how it can be rather than what it quote unquote should be. Um, I am oftentimes saying, stop shoulding on yourself, right? The shoulds really get us in trouble. They really, really do. And I get it, parents, I understand. There were expectations placed on you. And that might be disguised. You might be disguising it as, well, I had respect for my parents. So my parents didn't expect me to take care of them. I wanted to take care of them and things like that. And while that may be true, there generally are hidden expectations. Hence the title of today's episode being The Hidden Dynamics, right? So in parent and adult child relationships, these expectations are generally like often unspoken beliefs about how each party should act and communicate and feel within the relationship. Um, this can also play in when I hear parents say, we were so close and I expected to continue this, being BFFs with my daughter and, or having my son always be near me and being, my son was my best friend, those types of things. So this is where the expectations can begin coming into play. They're generally shaped by cultural norms, family dynamics, and personal experiences. Well, this is what I did with my parents. This is what I expect from my kid, right? They kind of serve as like a silent set of rules, if you will, guiding how the parent and child interact with one another. However, I see a lot of these expectations when it comes to how how the relationship should remain close and intact from the parent side. And when I see the expectations that the children have, it's in how can I break free and be away from you. And when we as parents get stuck in clenching and trying desperately to keep the relationship as it has always been, is when the kids are like, "You're suffocating me. You're trying to control me, and I want nothing to do with this." And then they tend to move further and further and further and further away, right? And sometimes these expectations can be things that um, we expect us, we want as parents, the things that we want our children to do. And our children are saying, "I'm not living your life and I'm no longer under your control." Right. And I know I have parents that say, "But I wasn't a controlling parent." I'm here to tell you that if you acted as a manager in any capacity in your parent child relationship as your child was growing up, which I'm here to tell you we have to a degree, right? We have to manage getting our kids off to school and doing the homework and all the things. So you were a manager on some level. And if you were a manager, you were controlling. It may not be, overt in your face type of controlling, but there is a level of control. And with that control comes expectations. Okay. It's a rare thing that I see for parents to be able to move from managing, and then moving directly into the consultant role when the kid becomes an adult, or, for all intents and purposes, an adult at 18, but generally like after college and things like that. They don't know how to let go of that control. I'm not talking about, letting go of your kid, but letting go of the control. So parents tend to have expectations around respect is a big one. Gratitude is another one. Communication and behavior. So many parents feel that their adult children should show respect, which, and to the parent, might include things like speaking to them politely, not the kind of carefree way that a lot of the younger generations can speak to people. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a different way of communicating. Parents, another way that they expect their children to show respect is in considering their opinions. So for the child to take in, and go to the parent and say, what are your opinions on this? And then to take that under consideration. And then maintaining family traditions. And that's another big one. You know, well, they always go to, my daughter-in-law's family for Christmas. Um, and they never come to see me or us for Christmas. And we always had Christmas together. We went to the in-laws, anything for the in-laws, we went on Thanksgiving. Well, your adult child has married and has a partner now, and they are creating their own traditions. And this is another piece of the control, right? And when we grasp to hold on to and control the narrative, control what is going to happen, this is when our children are trying to push us away because they naturally and need to be able to separate from the parent and individuate to become their own person. So, respect is a big thing, right? Some parents also want their kid to accept their guidance and advice and do as they say, even if, the child's trying to navigate their own life. When it comes to gratitude, parents, this is what can covertly be really a transactional relationship. So I know that as the older generation, it's what was expected of us. Hear that word, expected of us to give gratitude. Call grandma and thank her for the birthday card. Thank her for the, $25 gift card. Um, Call your mom and say thank you, right? Your parents paid for your college education. Tell them thank you. Well, I invite you to consider some a different perspective and a different way of thinking on this. Number one, when you're raising your children, they do not owe you anything. They really don't. They don't owe you because it is our job as a parent to provide things for our children. Hear me again. As a parent, it's our job to provide them with things they need growing up. If we elect to provide them with a trip to Paris for a month in the summer of their senior year of high school, was that necessary? I don't know. Maybe in your family it is. But then that's an expectation that you're placing. I'm choosing to send you to Paris, right? Because this is what our family tradition has always been when the kid may not want to go or what have you. And it's an expectation that they say thank you, that they do something in return. That is a transactional relationship. We want gratitude, thank yous to come organically and without pressure. Otherwise, they're empty words. They really are empty words. And that, I don't know about you, but that's not the type of relationship I want with my children. That was the type of relationship that I had with my children for a very long time. But after the estrangement, I learned that I give without an expectation of something in return. Period. End of story. If I give my kid $100, and my sending them $100, I'm thinking they're going to use it to, I don't know, to pay the light bill. They may go out and blow it on coffee. I don't know. It's not up to me. I have given them $100 from my heart, and they get to choose how they want to spend it. I learned about this when I really started digging in and doing my work on why did I want to control the narrative on how people spent their money and saying thank you and all of these things. And the example I was given was, lots of people have these expectations when they give maybe a homeless person on the street corner money. And they say, I'm not going to give them money because they'll go and blow it on drugs. And I say, then that's a transactional relationship. You are expecting something in return for giving them the money. When something is given from your heart, there is no expectation on that. That person gets the choice to use it however they see fit. Otherwise, we have an expectation. Okay. Um, Now, on the vein of gratitude, when my children were growing up, I did ask them to contact their grandparent to say thank you for gifts and treats and things like that. And that was my job, I felt, as a parent. Number one, to help them learn how to say thank you, why to say thank you, right? But then helping them to also learn when does that feel good to say it and when does it not. And second, it was to help teach them and help them to stay in communication with their grandparents. Okay. Some adult children do that today and some do not. And again, if we have an expectation around that, well, that's what today's episode is about. Communication, that's another thing that parents have, is that their kids will maintain some sort of regular contact with them. That might be once a day, once a month, what have you. Come see us twice a year, see us every Sunday for Sunday dinner, whatever. That type of communication is another piece of the expectations that parents hold. And behaviors. Parents have this is another place I see. Um, Usually I don't see it often, but when I do see it, it's pretty intense and it has a really big effect and plays a rather large role in the estrangement. And that is when parents have expectations on how their adult child should behave in their personal lives and in within the family context, right? Things like expectations around lifestyle choices, relationships, career paths, what school they're going to attend, how they engage with family, responsibilities, and traditions. So I'd ask you to think on that. Um, for the adult child, their expectations in a relationship, I think, revolve around, again, feeling seen, heard, and validated, right? So around validation, being understood, having autonomy, and being able to grow, that their parents will help support their growth as independent adults, right? Not support their growth only if they're going to grow in the way that I want them to grow, right? So these are expectations are often more, almost 99% of the time, unspoken and unexamined. This is not something that parents sit down with their adult child and say, okay, here are my expectations. When you leave this house, then this is how this will be, this, that, and the other thing. And the adult child doesn't do theirs either, right? So these are all unspoken and generally very unexamined. So, um, and they arise when either party operates on long held beliefs and what they believe their role is in the relationship. And these can be two very different perspectives, right? So there is that. Parents, unmet expectations can lead to disappointment and resentment and eventually estrangement. So parents perceive a lack of respect or gratitude. They can interpret that independence um, and different life choices as a rejection of family values or of non-gratitude for their upbringing. And again, remember, they don't owe us for their upbringing. That's our responsibility. But this perceived lack of acknowledgement, if you will, can create a sense of betrayal and loss for the parent, right? So for the parent, we have um, a perceived lack of respect or gratitude, resulting in a rejection, basically, of them, of the family, in the way they were brought up, and then a betrayal and loss. For the adult child, um, they may feel invalidated or misunderstood when their expectations for autonomy and validation and acceptance aren't met. Um, Parents can impose outdated expectations, such as seeking approval for a lifestyle choice or a life choice or a school choice, right? Or adhering to family traditions that no longer align with their values. So this over time, these are needs that the child has, and when they go unmet, they can build resentment and lead to the adult child distancing themselves emotionally and physically from that relationship. And so the cycle of unmet expectations can easily become a catalyst for estrangement. And each person generally retreats kind of off into their own hurt and disappointment. The communication breaks down, the emotional walls of defense go up, and here we are, right? The parent may feel rejected and wondering why their kid has become distant and disconnected, and the adult child can feel suffocated and or unacknowledged, struggling to find a way to navigate the relationship that also honors their independence. So, this can carry a profound emotional toll when all of this is going unacknowledged, i.e., not being talked about and discussed, right? Because what is this? Underlying all of this is conflict. It's just unspoken conflict. And so we're not talking about it. And it carries an emotional toll, it's emotional baggage. So the parents, again, feel unappreciated and disrespected, and it leaves them grappling with this sense of abandonment and rejection, right? The adult child feels unheard, feel like they're invalidated um, and controlled, right? Which then breaks down all the communication. And one thing I want to just kind of circle back to on this is when an adult child seeks to be validated, when any human being seeks to be validated, but in this context, I want to bring attention to the adult child. When the adult child is seeking to be validated, seen, heard, and validated, and they're not, and or they are invalidated, it is human nature to seek out validation elsewhere. So, in my case, I was invalidated at every turn as a kid. And what did I do? I went and got my validation through work. So I became a workaholic. I became an overachiever because I was desperately seeking the validation that I had purpose, that I had meaning, that I was wanted, that I was needed. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this. He talks about this a lot. He's like, what better way to feel wanted and needed than to become a physician when everybody wants you, right? And everyone needs you. And that's what he did. Another way to do this is to seek it out through a partner. So it's not uncommon for adult children to become workaholics and or seek out this validation through a partner or spouse. And sometimes that partner or spouse is someone the parent doesn't deem appropriate or a good fit for or worthy of their child. And the more that then that generally lends to more invalidation, which generally then pushes the child further to the spouse or partner because the spouse and partner is saying, your mom is being ridiculous. Of course you're hurt. Of course you want to be validated and seen. Come here, let me see you. Let me validate you. And then there's a natural drive to pull away from the parent. So just want to bring attention to that. um, these expectations between parent and adult child um, are not formed in a vacuum. They're deeply influenced by cultural and generational and personal values. So, in some cultures, strong family ties, respect for elders, communal living are highly valued, right? Um, Generational values, older generations view respect and duty to parents as a fundamental part of being in a family dynamic. They may view regular communication and involvement in the child's life as a sign of love and respect. And younger generations generally prioritize mental health, personal space, and setting boundaries as essential components of a healthy relationship. Personal values. A parent who faced, significant hardships raising their children might expect gratitude in the form of acknowledgement of their sacrifices. And this is where estrangement goes off the rail, or relationships goes off the rails again. Again, our children do not owe us for our sacrifices. We chose to become parents. We had a responsibility to raise our children, and it is our stuff to deal with when it comes to the sacrifices we may have had to have made in order to parent our child or children. So there's that. Okay. Um, how do we begin to move out of this? What can we do to adjust our expectations and things like this? Right. Well, first thing I'm always teaching is curiosity. We got to get curious. And I don't mean in this context, I don't mean curious about the other person. I'm talking about parents, your own curiosity about yourself. Why do I have expectations? Where do those expectations come from? Why am I uncomfortable if my adult child does something different than what I expect? Right? I mean, we there is that. We also, if at all possible, if you're in communication at all with your child, so before it actually goes full on no contact, and estrangement on that level, is to get this out into the open after you've done your own self reflection and figured out your piece of this. I do not recommend going to your child and asking all sorts of questions if you are not aware of what is driving your bus, right? So there is that. It's important to communicate if you are still in relationships with your child or children, and to be able to bring it out into the open. Again, this is sort of peaceful communication and conflict resolution, asking open-ended questions, being curious to learn more, not curious to be nosy, right? um, and being able to respect that someone else is able to live their life the way that they see fit, and we need to stay in our lane and worry about keeping our lane focused on us, right? When you're in the car driving on the highway, if you are rubbernecking looking at someone else on the side of the road, you are likely to crash your own car. Stay focused on your lane. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to leave it here for today. I really encourage you to think about these things. And even if you are currently estranged, this is valuable work to be doing, because when you become reconciled, you will have a different perspective. You will be able to approach your relationship differently, having done this excavation on expectations. Where they came from for you. Why do you have them? Are they still necessary? Why do you feel uncomfortable letting them go? What would happen if you let them go? Those kinds of questions for self-reflection. So I hope this episode has been helpful in some way for you. And if you feel that it has, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and leave a positive review. If you're interested in being supported through your estrangement experience, please reach out. I'm happy to see if I can be of support to you. And if I cannot, then I can provide you with potential resources and referrals out. Again, I'm not a fit for everyone, and not everyone is a fit for me. So, but if I can be of support to you in any way, please reach out via email. theestrangedheart@gmail.com. And again, you can also leave a voicemail. The link for that is in the show notes, as well as directly on the website, theestrangedheart.com. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent, and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.